Lindsay Laird, and I'd like to call the Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth meeting to order. It is Friday, June 25th, 2021 at 9:04 a.m. or a.m. I'd like to welcome all the commissioners, staff, and guests to today's meeting. Let's go through introductions, starting with commissioners. We'll start with the participants in the room, and then we'll move to those that are on Zoom. So please introduce yourself and the role that you serve on the commission. Would you mind starting?
Hello. Start recording. Jimmy, will you start recording, please?
Yes.
I am representing the PAR boards, a post adjudication review board, as a foster parent with an agency.
John Schneider, I'm representing the Oklahoma Association of Youth Services, appointed by the governor.
Jackie Aaron, I'm representing CASA, and I represent CASA of Western Oklahoma.
Angela Marcy, I'm the district attorney for District 2, which includes Custer, Beckham, Washita, Roger Mills, and Ellis counties. And I'm the governor's appointment on behalf of the Oklahoma District Attorneys Association.
I'm Jonathan Hall. I'm a financial advisor in Tulsa, and I was appointed by the governor to represent business and industry.
Rachel Holt, Executive Director of the Office of Juvenile Affairs.
Linda Front, Director of the Department of Rehabilitation Services.
Thank you. We'll go to our commissioners on Zoom, starting with Commissioner Harrington.
I'm Commissioner Harrington, representing OCCY for Oklahoma Care, and I work for Circle of Care.
Judge Warren. Judge, I think you may be on mute.
Mike Warren, representing the Oklahoma Supreme Court.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioner Myers.
Can you guys hear me? My name is Brenda Myers. I am the director of the Comanche County Juvenile Bureau and the Comanche County Juvenile Detention Center, and I have been appointed to represent the Metropolitan Juvenile Bureaus.
And Secretary Brown.
Good morning, Justin Brown, Director for the Oklahoma Department of Human Services and Secretary of Human Services for the state of Oklahoma.
Do we have any other commissioners on Zoom? Great. And I'm Lindsay Laird with the Arnold Family Foundation. I'm appointed by Senator Pro Tem Greg Treat as a member with demonstrated interest in improving children's services who is not employed by a state agency or a private organization that receives state funds. Ms. Jett, would you please confirm quorum by listing the commissioners you heard?
I have Secretary Brown, Commissioner Aaron, Director Front, Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Harrington, Director Holt, Commissioner Kurth, Commissioner Laird, District Attorney Marcy, Commissioner Myers, Commissioner Schneider, and Judge Warren.
Do we have quorum? Yes, we do. Wonderful. I want to remind our commissioners to please keep your videos on for the duration of this meeting. We kindly ask guests to turn off your video except when you are presenting. Mr. Whittyfield, would you please help facilitate introductions of staff and guests?
Yes, if we could start with the director and then assistant director.
Good morning, I'm Annette Jacoby, and I'm the director here at OCCY.
Morning, I'm Mark James. I'm the assistant director here at the commission as well.
I'd like to continue with the administrative department. If we could have our public information officer.
I'm Rob Agnew. I'm the public information officer for the Oklahoma Commission on Youth. Children and Youth, I'm sorry.
And then Ms. Taylor, if you would introduce yourself.
Bad morning.
I am Jared Taylor. I'm the office coordinator for the Commission on Children and Youth.
And then if we could have Ms. Jett introduce herself.
I'm Amanda Jett. I'm the executive secretary for the Oklahoma Commission on Children.
Excellent. Did I miss anyone that's in the conference room with the commissioners? Besides the Child Death Review Board, we'll get to in a moment. Okay.
Excuse me. I'm Jennifer Harden. I'm the legislative liaison for the Commission on Children and Youth.
Thank you. If we could have the program manager for Child Death Review Board introduce yourself and then your staff.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Rhodes, Program Manager for Child Death Review Board. And I appreciate you all letting us come in person today, in addition to the staff, but I'll let them introduce themselves.
Good morning, I'm Liz Kopp, Case Manager with the Child Death Review Board.
Good morning, Joseph McGrath, also Case Manager with the Child Death Review Board.
Thank you. If we could have the program manager on Zoom for the Office of Juvenile System Oversight, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, I'm Tina Pendergraph, and I am one of 2 supervisors with the Office of Juvenile Systems Oversight.
Thank you. The program manager for Post Adjudication Review Board.
Morning, everybody. Keith Pirtle. I'm the program manager for the Post Adjudication and Review Boards in Oklahoma.
And we'll follow suit, program manager for Office of Planning and Coordination.
Good morning, I'm Danielle Dill, Program Manager for the Office of Planning and Coordination with OCCY.
And then if we could have Ms. Lorenz introduce herself.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Lorenz. I'm the Admin Assistant for the Office of Planning and Coordination at OCCY.
And then Mix Elder, if you'll please introduce yourself. Adrian, are you there?
Yes, sorry, there's some background noise. Adrian Elder, Coordinator for Parent Partnership Board. Thank you.
And I think I'm rounding out the list for OCCY staff. My name is Jimmy Whittyfield Jr. I'm the Program Manager for Freestanding Multidisciplinary Teams. I'd also like to announce quickly that I and Ellen Lorenz are the Zoom moderators. So if you have any technical needs, please contact us. I'll put please contact us. That'd be great.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Whittyfield. Oh, Mr. Whittyfield, are you going to facilitate guest introductions at this point?
Yes, thank you for that. Ms. Loggins, if you'd introduce yourself.
My name is Brenda Loggins. I am an individual from the community.
Thank you. Ms. Everett.
Good morning, Amanda Everett from the Attorney General's Office, acting as legal counsel to the Commission for Children and Youth.
Ms. Emerson. Amy Emerson, are you there? We'll come back to you. Mix Harvey.
I'm Ashley Harvey. I'm the Youth Justice Policy Analyst at Oklahoma Policy Institute.
Thank you. Mix Martin.
Good morning. This is Beth Martin with the Oklahoma State Department of Health, the Director of Family Support and Prevention Services. And I'm here to talk this morning about the state plan for child abuse prevention.
Thank you. Mix Bailey. Brianna Bailey, are you there?
Good morning. Yes, this is Brianna Bailey, Managing Editor for the Frontier.
Thank you. Constanzia, are you there to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Constancia Nitza. I serve the Department of Human Services and Government Affairs.
Thanks. Mix Dorman, if you'd please introduce yourself. Joe Dorman, are you there?
Joe Dorman with the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy.
Thanks. Mix Edwards from OMES.
Morning. I am Letitia Edwards with OMES Agency Business Services.
Thank you. Mix Manaw, if you'd please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Linda Manaw with the Potts Family Foundation.
Thanks. Mix Duplin.
Good morning, I'm Roseanne Duplon and I'm with the Oklahoma Disability Law Center and I'm the policy specialist here.
Mix Williams.
Good morning, I'm Shamika Williams, Director of Children, Youth and Family Services at the Department of Mental Health, sitting in for Commissioner Carrie Slatton Hodges.
Mix Fair.
Good morning. I'm Sherry Fair, and I'm the Executive Director of Parent Promise Prevent Child Abuse Oklahoma.
Thank you. And Ms. Felty.
Hi, I'm Wanda Felty. I'm with the Center for Learning and Leadership, former commissioner, representing children with special needs. Thanks.
Excellent. Chairperson Laird, I believe those are all the guests. Did I miss anyone that's on Zoom that has not already introduced yourself? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whittyfield. We have one guest here in the room. Would you mind introducing yourself, Emma?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Emma Sherry. I'm the Health and Human Service Policy Analyst at the office.
Thank you to all of our guests who are here today. We appreciate your participation in all commission meetings. We have one individual who has signed up for public comment. Just a quick reminder that you have 3 minutes. Mr. Joe Dorman, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I apologize about the jazz in the background. I'm at the Oklahoma Academy board retreat and had to step out in the hallway. Thank you for allowing me to have a few moments to speak. Just wanted to bring about some points that would be of importance to the commissioners, we feel, from the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy. We have interim study deadlines that are happening this week, and I'm sure Jennifer will cover some of those. We did have some that were filed that deal with some operations with Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth. Senator Floyd has requested 2 studies, one to look at suicides in Oklahoma that are youth related, and then also to look at an overall youth death study to see what the highest number of causes for youth death are. And so we're going to work together on those to provide the information to Senator Floyd to make sure she has that information. As of a couple of days ago, there were 4 youth-related interim studies filed in the House of Representatives. The Senate does not make those public until the filing is over and they've been approved. So we'll know more in a few weeks about those. Also, we have our Heroes Ball coming up on July 30th. As you're aware, we honored the Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth a couple of years ago for the work that you did as one of our partner agencies in youth services, and just wanted to announce unofficially some of the award winners this year. We're going to recognize Bob and Jean Harbison for our Lifetime Achievement Award. We're recognizing Chad and Cheris Richardson for the Individual Advocates of the Year for the work they've done through their own foundation and supporting other foundations and nonprofits. And then we are going to recognize Commissioner Fry's team, as well as the county health departments and the tribal health departments for the work over the last year with vaccine efforts. And then, of course, the coming numbers, they're growing for ages 12 and up. And so we certainly want to invite the commissioners and anyone else to attend the Heroes Ball and be a part of that. We're doing a simulcast event this year. It will be in Oklahoma City at the Skirvin Hotel on the evening of Friday, July 30th. And then it will be at the Greenwood Cultural Center in Tulsa at the same time. And so I'm always open for questions on that. You can contact me at jdorman@oica.org, or my number is 405-892-9205. Thank you for allowing me the time. And as always, we appreciate the cooperation and work we were able to do together.
Thank you, Mr. Dorman. Just a quick comment about speaking during commission meetings. We kindly ask that only commissioners speak both in person and via Zoom. Guests are always welcome to sign up for public comment prior to each meeting and are encouraged to do so. If your comment or presentation would take more than 3 minutes, you can always request to be added to the agenda on a future commission meeting. And to do either one of those, please reach out to Ms. Jett. All right, moving on to agenda item number 4, we have the review and approval of the May 21st meeting minutes. The meeting minutes were provided to you in your packet. Are there any amendments or corrections to the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I move that they be approved.
Thank you, Judge Warren. Is there a second? Thanks, Dr. Kerr. Any final discussion? All right, Ms. Jett, please take the vote.
Secretary Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Director Front?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington? Aye. Director Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Laird,
Yes.
District Attorney Marcy,
Yes.
Commissioner Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Judge Warren,
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have the presentation and approval of the finance report from Ms. Edwards. Ms. Edwards, we're glad to have you back with us. The floor is yours.
Good morning again. In your packets, you should have the financial reports for the month ending May 31st, 2021. The first report in the packet is your budget to actuals or budget comparison summary. And there we can see we had an annual budget of $5,429,223. We've had total encumbrances and expenditures of $3,213,328. That leaves us remaining budget of $2,215,894 for the remainder of the fiscal year. The next report is your allotment budget and available cash. If we could look at the last column of that report, the available cash column, you can see the cash as of May 31st. Your appropriated cash, or the 191, we had a balance of $902,197. Next is your 200 or revolving fund. There we had a balance of $866,602. And last is the 210 class fund with a balance of $109,556. That gave us a total of $1,878,356 in available cash. The next set of reports are the summary of receipts and disbursements. And here we're going to take a look at the revenue that has come in. The first page of that report is the 190 fund. That fund should have no further activity. The next page is the 191, and that is your current fiscal year fund for appropriations. There we can see your monthly transfer of your appropriated allotment of $191,285. Through May, we had received $2,104,135 in appropriated funds. Next is the 199 fund, and that also is a fund that is no longer active. Following that is your 200 revolving fund. The first column of this report, we can see that we've received a total of $185,612 to this fund. Next is the 210 CAMTA funds. There we can see we've received a total of $1,060,144 in CAMTA funds. Following that is the 994, or what is used as a payroll fund. We currently do not have any funds there. And last is the 79901, or the OST clearing account fund. For the month of May, we received $21,445 in that fund. Once the month of May was reconciled and finished out, those funds would be transferred to your 200 fund or your 210 fund, and this fund will go back to a zero balance for clearing June's activity. Okay, and that is all I have. Are there any questions on your reports?
I do have a question. It looks to me from the current financials, the period ending May 31, that there's a carryover of 2.2 million through that period. Can you, one, confirm that that's the case? And then second, do you have a projected carryover for the rest of the year? Is there some backloaded expenses?
As of this time, We have not totally projected FY 22 or FY 21 carryover into FY 22. We are currently working on the budget work program for next year, and we should have, that finalized soon. At this time, it will not be near $2 million. Right now, in the 191 fund, or the fund that will be available for FY 22 carryover, we have $902,000 in that fund. We expect another $191,000 to be added for the month of June. So I would be closer to around 900,000 at this time.
So did I read it correctly that the current, as of May 31, that carryover number is 2.2, and then there's something that gets us to roughly $1 million in the subsequent month?
Okay, which report are you seeing?
Page 9. The
okay, on the budget. Oh, okay, that is the budget. Okay, so that is total budget that would be remaining, but it's not all. Some of that includes revolving funds. It's going to include your 200 fund and your 210 fund. So of that 2.2 million, it looks like about roughly 1.3 million of that is revolving fund. Okay. So, I mean, technically, yes, that money will be available in FY 22, but when we use the carryover fund, it's really only going to be the appropriated portion of that. So it'll be closer to about 900,000 that may be carried over into FY 22.
And then maybe a follow-up question. Proposed 22 budget shows a projected carryover of 867,000. So if I hear right, we would have a 940 in fiscal year 21 and an 867 in fiscal year 22. Am I reading that right?
Yes, I believe so. That's kind of where we are right now, is thinking there would be about 867,000 available of the appropriated funds for carryover. So that's about what I'm thinking, around 900,000 or so.
For just that period, which would be in addition to current year carryover of the 940 or whatever the number looks like at the end of the year.
Well, no, there will only be that one carryover amount.
Okay.
Mr. James, did you want to comment?
So we've been working with Randy Bain, who worked with Letitia, and so yes, our projected carryover at this point is about 866,000. I will plan on going over that here in a few moments, our plans for that this coming year. But yeah, our projections at this point for the carryover is about $866,000. Thank you. What I've been.
An obvious follow-up at some point would be, what's the strategy for deploying those dollars? I don't know that taxpayers give us money to hold on to.
No, you're absolutely right. I believe, Assistant Director James will be presenting on that when he presents the budget later on today. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
And so our appropriated dollars that we're anticipating carrying over into the next, from this fiscal year into next fiscal year is about $900,000, correct? So we haven't used what the state gave us all last year. We're going to talk about that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Good clarification.
Yeah. I make a motion to accept the financials.
Second.
Any final discussion? All right, please take the vote.
Secretary Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Director Front?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington?
Aye.
Director Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurth?
Yes.
Commissioner Laird?
Yes.
District Attorney Marcy?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Judge Warren?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving on, our next agenda item is the election of officers. I recognize that it may feel like we just did this because we did back in December. If you recall, our immediate past chair, Jason Charles, his term was ending and 2 other officers were not reappointed, leaving us with several officer vacancies. I was elected chair knowing it would There would be another election this month to get us back on schedule with terms as well as the state's fiscal year. With that, I'll like to turn it over to Director Front to lead the discussion on the election of officers.
Okay, thank you. Personnel Committee met, as Commissioner Laird mentioned, that we need to get our officers, kind of get our back on the fiscal year and get us back on track. So Commissioner Laird actually reached out to all the proposed nominations, and we need to handle them separately, correct? Okay. And each of them that were asked were willing to serve, but we are also happy to accept nominations from the floor. So entertaining the first proposed slate officer would be for chair. And we are offering Lindsay Laird. Lindsay has done an outstanding job and would like to have her continue in this role. So with that, I handle the vote?
We can ask for a motion to.
So do I have a motion to accept the nomination or any other nominations from the floor? Okay. So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Final discussion? Anybody else? Secretary Brown, I saw you came off mute.
Just to vote.
All right, we'll take the vote.
Nice try.
Yeah.
I know I'm first, so I got to get ready.
Real carefully up there.
Oh, Judge Warren, I think is talking.
Oh, Judge Warren, I believe you're on mute. Judge, we can't hear you.
I'm working to unmute now.
Thank you.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, hang on just a sec.
We can hear you now.
Oh.
There he goes.
Judge Warren, did you have any comments?
No, I did not. I was communicating with someone else.
Okay, no worries. We'll take the vote. Secretary Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Director Front?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Director Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurth?
Yes.
Commissioner Laird? Yes. District Attorney Marcy?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider?
Yes.
Judge Warren?
Yes.
Congratulations. And thank you.
Thank you, Dean Marcy.
And moving on to our next officer would be vice chair, and we nominate John Schneider. And so if I could ask for a motion for that, to accept it or to add any other potential nominees.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Final conversation? Take the vote. Secretary Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Director Front?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Director Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurth?
Yes.
Commissioner Laird? Yes. District Attorney Marcy?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider?
Yes.
Judge Warren?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Last officer will be for secretary, nominating Dr. Callie Kurth. Thank you, Dr. Kurth, for accepting the nomination. And so if anyone wants to open it up for other nominations or give me a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second, okay.
Secretary Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Director Front?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Director Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurth?
Yes.
Commissioner Laird? Yes. District Attorney Marcy?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider?
Yes.
Judge Warren? Judge Warren?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Director Front, and thank you all for agreeing to serve. Following that, the great questions and conversation regarding the carryover budget, we are moving into agenda item number 7. we have OCCY Assistant Director Mark James to present OCCY's 2022 budget. There is a summary of the budget in your packet, I believe on page 22. Director Jacoby, before we turn over, is there anything else you would like to add?
I want to thank Mr. James for working so hard on this. This has been a very, I don't know, interesting process because there have been lots of changes even in the past week or two to kind of discover where we can best use funds. I really want to say that we appreciate the work of OMES and ABS. They are our contractor. We don't have a finance person here, so we contract back with OMES and we appreciate all the assistance they provide to us. But it is one of those things we have to dig and have explanation and really get down to detail and try to figure things out month to month. So I really appreciate Mr. James' work on this. Oh, and I also want to say, I want to thank the Finance Committee. Maybe you were going to do that too, but Director Holt, Director Front, we appreciate you really going through the detail with us and making sure that you understand what we're doing, and it makes us feel better, and we appreciate your critiques. So thank you very much. And if anyone is interested in serving on that committee, I'm sure you can sign up.
Yes, thank you for the time this morning. And I am presenting a proposal for the fiscal year 22 budget for the commissioners to review and approve. We do need to, this is to be submitted next week for final approval. So that's why we're here today to go over it with you. And thank you for the Finance Committee who have spent time going over this with us, and particularly to OMES who do all the background actual work. Because as Annette said, we do not have a CFO here. I just get to be the attempt to be the translator of that information for you all and for our staff. So we do have a presentation I'll go through quickly. If I can navigate this. So we were fortunate this year to get an appropriations of $2.5 million. You see on the chart here, the column to the far right is the amount that we received of state appropriations, and that compares to the past couple of years. And it is a good amount higher because thankfully we submitted a request on that you all approved last year, and we got the budget request. So $214,000 is what we requested for in addition to last year's appropriations. And that was for 3 positions, which we, like I said, we were able to get. We got a community development planner for the Office of Planning and Coordination. We got a case manager for the Child Death Review Board and an administrative assistant for the Office of Juvenile System Oversight. So that is the $214,000 that we requested and received. And thankfully, those positions have all been announced. So we're excited that hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll actually have those additional staff moving and working alongside with us. Of the $2.5 million of state appropriations, 90% of that does go to our salaries, to the staff that we are working. And we are budgeting this coming year for 26 full-time employees and 2 part-time staff. So that then just leaves 10% of that appropriation to go towards keeping the lights on, paying for the lease, paying for travel, paying for all the other administrative costs. But so that is our appropriations. And this is a look at our projected entire budget. As you're aware of what Ms. Edwards pointed out earlier, our projected budget for last year was $5.4 million. For this coming year, we're looking at $4.7 million. And this is the breakdown of that information. Obviously, the largest part of that is our appropriations, the $2.5 million. Of non-appropriations, we're projecting $630,000. And so that's comprised of the federal 4E money that we're eligible for. The work of our Office of Juvenile System Oversight, Post-Education Review Board, and multidisciplinary teams are able to be reimbursed for the work they do. So we submit those claims through DHS, and as DHS is the recipient for 4E funds for the state of Oklahoma, we're able to receive that. So we're anticipating $630,000, well, about actually $540,000 of 4E funds. We also receive our recipient annually of the Children's Justice Act grant, which is federal money, but again is managed by DHS. So with those total funds, we're expecting about $630,000 this coming year. The next item there is $729,000 that we project from CAMTA money. And this is simply a projection, but just as you're aware, we are required to establish and work with freestanding multidisciplinary teams. So the money that we anticipate, which is $729,000, comes to us from DHS and through court funds, but that comes to us and we just send it straight out to those multidisciplinary teams. So we actually are able to keep 5% of that total amount, which we have included in the non-appropriations projection. But the 729 that we're projected for CAMTA, 100% of that goes straight to those teams. So we don't do anything with that. It comes to us and we have contract with the 37 teams that Mr. Whitfield works throughout the state. And then projected carryover. This is what we spoke about earlier. We are projecting that once all the money's cleared out for this current year, we anticipate $866,000 to be available for us. Again, that's projection that could go up or that could go down over the next few months once that's all cleared out and finalized, which will not happen until later this fall. But it is a good amount of money. And as you will recall, we have conversations for the past couple of years about a database. Our ability to track, collect, and report and utilize data to help drive our work has been pretty poor for quite some time. And so we've been working to try to create a process so that we have a system that works for us, that tracks what we do, and can report out the work that we do that in a way it impacts the state of Oklahoma. So we've been for several years now trying to set aside the money that we felt we need to find a vendor to help us create this database. And so last year, our carryover was even higher than this amount. And we anticipated that occurring this current fiscal year. And we even stated that to the legislature and to the commission that we anticipated that being a project this current fiscal year. But it didn't occur for various reasons. We've had many conversations with vendors. OMS has been working with us to get this moving, and it didn't get completed in this current fiscal year. But that is going to be the majority of what this carryover will be utilized this coming year. And I have a breakdown of that carryover plan in a couple of slides. But on the database, we are happy to announce that we are communicating with the vendor now. OMS has reviewed the statement of work. They've recommended a contract. So the vendor is currently reviewing that contract. And we are hopeful that in the next month or so that we will actually have a contract in place with a vendor to begin this data system that's going to work with all of our major programs within the agency to get us really just up to speed where we should have been probably quite some time ago. So this is a look at what we project to be the revenues for this coming year, 4.7 million. There's a breakdown in your packet of all the expenditures and the projected revenue, and it's in this PowerPoint as well for you to look at. But just wanted to highlight some of the changes. For the most part, our budget is essentially going to be the same, essentially the same year to year for many years. But I just wanted to point out a few of the things that we are doing differently. One of them I've already announced is our new positions. We have $214,000 for those new positions that we will be, we already are moving forward with getting filled. We did have some minor salary change adjustments. There are two positions that we've really felt needed to be addressed right away. And then as the commission voted on last week, there was an adjustment to the executive director's position. So we have three positions that we've already projecting. So that's just $8,000 to our personnel budget that we're increasing. The agency database is the other issue we already discussed. So at this point, we're anticipating $500,000, which is part of that carryover money to be utilized for this database project. And the vendor indicates that we can do evaluation. That includes an evaluation of our programs and of our needs, and then the implementation of an actual data system. So it's not just creating a database. They're going to come in and evaluate each of our individual programs to identify what we do and what we need to be doing and what we need to be collecting to improve our work, and then again to be able to report out the work that we're doing and the impact each of our programs are having on the state of Oklahoma. Another good change that we're having is in Tulsa County. We do contract with the Tulsa County Juvenile Bureau for the Post-Education Review Board Coordinator services there. And we're going to increase that contract to $36,000. It has been $24,000 for the past few years. So those are just some of the bigger differences from last year's budget. So here's the carryover. Here's just a summary of just what we anticipate utilizing the $866,000 for this coming year. We have the juvenile competency program. Currently, when the court orders juvenile competency for a youth who is facing charges, if the correct competency of that juvenile is raised, we currently are paying for those evaluations. And we budget $50,000 annually, beginning last year, that amount, and we're continuing this year for those competency evaluations to occur statewide. I mentioned before the Tulsa County Park contract, we're increasing that We have $74,000 of our carryover that we are utilizing or set aside for various departments for training, transportation, and other small special projects. The database is the biggest chunk. $500,000 is going towards getting us the database that we need. $35,000 we have to set aside for IT, particularly for new staff, and particularly our telework transition. We're still transitioning to getting our staff what we need. Not all of our staff have mobile phones and mobile devices. So that's been a transition we started this past year and we're continuing this coming year. And as I mentioned before, our appropriations don't cover all of our just overhead costs that need to function. So we're using a portion of this. That's what the $74,000 and the $35,000 to kind of help just do the operational needs that we have as an agency. And the last area there is the child abuse examiner. We contract with Dr. Mary Stockett and Dr. Ryan Brown with the University of Oklahoma to be our chief and assistant chief child abuse examiner. And that contract is $100,000. So that is a summary of how we're projecting to use that carryover money this coming year.
Mr. James,
Yes.
can I ask you, would now be an appropriate time to ask
Sure.
a question about this? The IT cost for the $35,000, is that a position that you're creating to then manage it? Okay, then my other question is, is there a need for a position? I know that the provider will provide some technical support, but who will manage this beautiful new database that we're purchasing?
Well, we actually have a position and we have an evaluator position. We were granted that position a couple of years ago by the legislature. So we have, of our 26 FTE, one of those is an evaluator that we have the potential to fill and to manage this database. We have some discussions on whether should we hire that position before we have a database or should we get it in place in the midst of it. So at this point, we have not moved on that, but we do have a position that's already budgeted that can help work with us through that system. We just had to determine when and how to best utilize that position.
Director Friend?
So, and to piggyback onto Commissioner Laird's question, will there be an annual maintenance cost with the database? And is that factored into the 500,000? Is the maybe it's too soon to know because you just started working with the vendor, but I'm curious about all 500,000. Is that just for development and to cover the maintenance for the first year? Because those maintenance costs can be pretty costly monthly.
So this does not include any maintenance costs after this current fiscal year. This is for the evaluation, development, and implementation of the database. So there will be ongoing maintenance costs in the future years.
Unknown at this time.
At this point, we project about 50,000, but it's unknown.
A year?
Commissioner Hall, and then we'll come to Secretary Brown.
And that was actually a part of my question as well, was in my experience with databases, not that it's that wide ranging, but there usually is this fairly decent recurring cost. And then the need to have somebody on site who's kind of leading that project and spending a lot of time implementing it and keeping it updated. So I guess my question is, if 10% of our budget is going to fixed costs, and then this very necessary big new thing that we're doing is happening, how are we anticipating covering that increase in fixed costs, either in the position or in recurring costs or some combination of both?
Well, the position is part of our appropriations and part of our salary budget, and that currently is annualized unless our state appropriations go down. But those additional fixed costs or other costs is dependent upon the non-appropriation money that we get, 40 funds, and carryover. And so that's currently how we have been operating to cover all of these projects right here that are not new. We do rely on this soft fund money that we aren't assured are going to be there year after year. Since our set appropriations, do just cover salaries and some of our basic overhead. So there's no guarantee that we were going to have those funds in the future. We've been fortunate for many years that the 4E has been pretty consistent, been pretty reliable. So we're just anticipating that that's still going to be available to us in the future. But again, it's no guarantee. And that's one of the reasons why we've never put salary positions on this additional 40 money, that we just rely on the state appropriations. because that other money is not guaranteed from year to year. But we've been fortunate that it has been consistent and reliable for several years, and we're hopeful that that will continue.
Secretary Brown?
Thank you. My question, I have a couple of questions, but a couple of them are connected to this same conversation topic. So I'll hit those real quick. And if there are more around the technology, maybe we'll punt to those and then I'll move on. I don't want to change the subject if people have more questions around technology, but it seems to me, sort of to Commissioner Hall's question, that there are also a couple of other potential recurring costs on this slide particularly that will extend beyond these one-time funds of carryover. So I would encourage the Finance Committee to look at, and likely already have, but look at what those costs look like and building those into base expenses rather than just pointing to them as a carryover. Because of course, it seems like we have annual carryover. So there likely is margin in the overall budget itself to absorb some of these costs. As we just talked about, there's 940,000 in the current fiscal year budget. So I think it seems to me that you could absorb those. I just want to make sure it's more of a multi-year approach to securing some of these services. Another question I had was, you may be a little early in this, but I would, and I assume because you're working with OMES, the answer to this question is yes, but the state has built a common reference architecture for technology. And so I would strongly encourage that as you're working through OMES, that whatever technology you acquire is connected to the same reference architecture, because that will allow in the future for state systems to talk to one another rather than each of our agencies just building in silos and not being able to mine longitudinal data from system to system. So again, working with OMES is absolutely the right approach, and they're the sort of pioneers in the state reference architecture. So that's helpful. Another one, back to the IT costs here in our space, and lots of times when we're building new technology, we end up saving money because the expense associated with maintaining extremely old legacy technology is higher than the cost of acquiring and maintaining future technology, because our technology is, I think I've just said it, extremely old. So it's likely, I don't know the answer to this question, but it's likely that there are some savings associated with whatever you're spinning down. But if that's nothing and it's Microsoft Excel that we're managing on now or something, then there would be an incurred cost. So those are my technology points and questions. Again, I don't want to change the subject here, but I do have questions back to the overall budget. So
please go ahead, Secretary Brown.
Okay, great. A question I do have is associated with the carryover $860,000. Does that include payroll lapse? Lots of times our agencies, we have to budget based on full year funding, or the funding for a full year for the FTE. And of course, that isn't going to happen. So does that 860 include payroll lapse, or is that payroll lapse on top of that 860?
No, this does include the payroll lapse.
So you've done an absorption table or something on those FTEs and built in that payroll lapse?
Well, you're asking a technical question that I'm not going to be able to answer, but I rely on. So our OMS folks has just indicated that this is the anticipated amount that they're considering.
Okay.
So it's my understanding that this includes everything that's factored in, but.
And I have no experience working with OMS on the finance side. I would just encourage you to dig a little deeper in that. There may be additional dollars, again, because as we go to budget to the legislature, it requires full year funding for those FTEs. And as you know, you're not going to be able to hire those folks on July 1 and keep them all the way through the year. So
right.
It's lapsed throughout the year.
Sure.
So that's one question. And then secondly, as we add workforce, I would love to at some point soon in these meetings try to get some performance numbers. And I know that's difficult with the data bit, with the case management or lack of case management technology that you have today. But what are the current performance on things like child death review board, those sorts of things? If there's a backlog or whatever in investigations, and what we expect for each of these positions to be able to do, because with additional carryover, and there may be a need for additional staff to meet performance metrics. So I would love to see those sorts of KPI going forward.
Sure. Thank you.
Again, I recognize the limitations of data in did I mention very old technology? But to the extent we can get any now, it would be great. And then that would also allow for us to see dramatic enhancements in data that you all can provide with new technology. So those are my questions, I think, or points.
Okay, to piggyback on Secretary Brown on the database, just my naivete, that is the database we're trying to get, is that going to give us some of that data that Secretary Brown's requesting, or do we already have access to that? I'm not really sure.
No, we do not have access to it.
Okay.
And the systems that we currently have that we rely on are Microsoft Access systems.
Yeah.
So, and OMS doesn't even support that anymore. So that's what we're relying on. So our anticipation is the vendor who was a state entity and works with other state agencies is familiar with this, with our systems and with our work. And they're going to spend time working with us to help us identify the numbers, the metrics that we need to be collecting, and reporting about on. So yes, the intent and the idea is that these performance measures, these metrics are going to be collected in this data system, and we're going to be able to report it out.
Thank you.
I would also just offer up, we are doing a tremendous amount in this space, trying to transform our digital infrastructure. And I would offer up our CTO at DHS, Dustin Crossfield, and his team to sort of help walk through that to make sure you're getting what you want. And he would certainly be available. That's, we have from a cabinet perspective, that technology cohort. So that group is getting together very regularly and along with other CTOs from other agencies. So the opportunity here is, as we build technology, is to make sure that it talks to one another. So there's data sharing, and really all for the benefit of the people that we serve. So anything we can do to help out, we are all on deck.
Thank you, Secretary Brown. Director Jacoby?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Thank you. I don't remember the term you used, but something architecture. We have never heard that term before. And we will go back to OMES and ask about that.
Right.
Mark, you may not have noticed, but in the director's report, I said who the vendor was, and you're being so good. But one of the reasons that we were interested in working with OU is that they had the evaluation capability to guide us, not just build a database. And we really, because we don't have a current evaluator on staff, the idea was if OU could be our evaluator, they are willing to do reports and to do some data mining for us as independent, objective people. And we thought that might be a benefit. So the other vendors did not have that capability. They had the technology capability, but they didn't have the help us get an overall plan together. So we feel really good about this. This is the same group that's been working with the Post Adjudication Review Board. So we feel like we've already piloted and feel like that's been a real positive experience, and we're willing to move on. So Mark, because I wrote it in my director's report, I just want, I'm gonna throw that out there. We're waiting on their signature, so we're that close.
The words are states reference architecture.
Okay.
So that's a data layer, it's a identity layer, it's a CRM that really does allow for connectivity of different technologies. So OU may be building on it. I'm not aware. So
I am not either. And we have been working with our OMES IT strategists. So if maybe they're not aware, I have no idea. So we'll make sure that connection happens.
It's pretty new, so I would assume they would. But again, don't hesitate to reach out if there's something we can do to help, even if it's just to provide some education to whoever needs to be working on OU or anybody else. Happy to help.
No, we love that. And I want to, we would love to take you up on Dustin. And I know that Director Holt has offered at her person as well. And so once we get going, that'd be great. I just want to say the reason we haven't hired this evaluator person is if OU can serve in that capacity and that cost is included, then we save another salary. So that's why we're holding off on that, to see what all kind of capability they can provide. If we were going with a vendor who was doing nothing but IT, we are absolutely going to need someone to shepherd us and do the data mining afterwards. So this is the route we've gone, and I think it could be really beneficial for us, but that's why we're holding on to that salary, and it has lapsed. So, and it is included in that carryover. So.
Commissioner Aaron?
I'm new to the commission, but the carryover, is there a deadline that we have to spend that down? Is it like a fiscal year you have to spend it down, or what is
Yes.
the time frame on that?
Well, so the carryover doesn't get finalized until like October 1. Then it just gets moved into our regular budget. And so at that point, I think November 1 or somewhere in that time frame, it just becomes part of our state budget, which then does expire June 30th. So we essentially have until June 30th of next year to spend it, simply because it becomes a part of our state budget plan again. So every year, it just kind of, it's only an annual amount, I guess is the short answer. But we have had carryover for multiple years. So, I mean, if we continue this pattern, but again, we're going to use a big portion of this database, which we've not been utilizing. So ideally, it won't be as high in the future once we get it.
Want to continue?
Yes. So the final page is just simply another breakdown of what was in your packet. The top table here shows all of our projected expenditures. It's broken down by department in each column. And then below that are the revenues that we've already covered. So this is a more detailed look at what I just presented. So this is currently our proposed budget for this coming year. So if there are any questions, I will certainly try to answer them best as I can. But otherwise, this is what we're presenting to the commission for approval that we need to get submitted by next week. And we certainly can make any adjustments or changes if necessary.
Move accepted.
Thank you, Director Friend. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Aaron. Any final discussion or questions? Appreciate everybody's thoroughness and questions and input at this process. We'll take the vote.
Secretary Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
Director Front?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Director Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Laird?
Yes.
District Attorney Marcy?
Yes.
Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider?
Yes.
And Judge Warren?
Yes.
Great. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move an agenda item up to move Secretary Brown's presentation on the overview of funds to Oklahoma Department of Human Services by the American Rescue Plan Act next, and then we'll move on to Ms. Martin's presentation after that. As many of you all know, there is a large influx of money coming to our state through the American Rescue Plan Act. Last meeting, we heard from Superintendent Hoffmeister and Beth Martin with the Health Department about their respective agencies' plans for the use of the ARPA funds. I'm really excited to hear from Secretary Brown to present an overview of funds provided to the Oklahoma Human Services Department. My hope is that this commission continues to provide updates to the commissioners as well as the broader public about how these funds will be utilized to serve our state's children and families. Secretary Brown, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. So I made a few notes here and really wanted to start with the concept of a philosophy around spending one-time dollars like this, much like we just talked about in budget where you have carryover. These are one-time funds. And so we want to make sure not to burden taxpayer with future encumbered costs associated with one-time dollars. However, because we are in a position in the state, and there's a lot of nuance to this comment, but we are not necessarily playing defense as some other states are utilizing dollars to plug budget holes and those sorts of things. We have an opportunity and I would tell you an obligation to move forward with these dollars in transformational ways, to consider them to be opportunities to change communities and change systems that have been long in need for investment. For example, did I mention that we have very old technology? I don't know if I mentioned that. While there are very limited, very limited components of these dollars are administrative in opportunity, almost all are intended to be invested, in the community itself. There are spaces in which you can use some dollars for administrative purpose. So that's not really what we're here for, but just making sure that that's clear. So transformation is one of the key points, and I think I'll be able to highlight some of that here. There are it's also important to note that each of the funding streams have different timeframes in which you are required to encumber and then actually spend the dollars. In fact, most of these, or a lot of these dollars, are intended through into federal fiscal year 23. So while the strategies that I will summarize right now are large and very comprehensive, they are not all of the strategies that will be deployed over the years. In fact, the luxury of being able to spend dollars from now through federal fiscal 23 is that we can see how things take hold, how interventions gain traction and can change. So, and then we can deploy dollars to respond to changing times. So we're thankful for that opportunity. Our federal partners have been good recently in providing guidance. In fact, they've been great partners. I think the transition to a new administration has just caused a little bit of a delay, which is certainly natural, but they have been extremely transparent. And some of the things I'll talk about here in just a second will highlight that. So we've been thankful for our federal relationships. In addition, the specific dollars around childcare, which I'll talk about briefly, require some additional reporting from specifically providers. And so that has resulted, of course, in the need for spending some administrative dollars to stand up easy ways for providers to submit some of that additional reporting requirement. So anyways, lots of complexity, but ultimately what I'd like to share from a big picture perspective is that the philosophy is transformation to the extent you can with some of these dollars, and that we have through, in some cases, in most cases, through the end of federal fiscal 23. So I'm going to highlight looks like 3 or 4 different funding streams. If somebody has questions about specific other ones, or I failed to mention something that you're interested in, I will follow up with those or whatever the proper venue is. So the first I'll mention is food funding. So over the last, traditionally our budget, the Department of Human Services, is about $2.3 billion. This year will likely be somewhere close to double that, really because of the flow of dollars from CARES Act forward through consolidated appropriations in December, and then of course ARP this year. So it's a tremendous, again, opportunity to transform. You mentioned Superintendent Hoffmeister. We've got a great relationship with our education partners and submitted our plan, joint plan for PEBT, pandemic food benefits, alongside the State Department of Education. It was accepted by FNS, and so we were excited for that. So now we're in the middle of looking to execute on that. That serves about, if I remember right, the first round is about 400,000 additional kids, food benefits, increased SNAP benefits. So it's really great to have partners like, many of the folks in this room who, when there are these new opportunities come up, that there aren't the traditional government silos that exist. We actually work together to solve problems for our communities. And so I'll appreciate Superintendent Hoffmeister now and her team. Another one that's important to note that made some headlines is the SNAP emergency allotments issue that came up. So as the disaster declaration was removed, there was a risk because SNAP emergency allocations, which are essentially taking every SNAP beneficiary from wherever they are, whether it's the full maximum amount or something less, all the way up to that full maximum amount. That was tied to the state's disaster declaration. And so it was about $40 million a month, somewhere in that range in SNAP benefits. So really impactful to our communities. And so the benefit of, again, having great federal partner relationships is we went to FNS upon this and worked with them, and actually were able to secure those ongoing emergency allocations through SNAP by essentially allowing me to identify an economic disaster associated with COVID-19, the pandemic. And so that allowed for us to continue to have those food benefits. So that's something that the commission would likely be interested in. I thought I would bring it up. So we are secured through the end of the calendar year for emergency allocations. Again, roughly $500 million in food benefits for kids and families across Oklahoma. All right, so next I'm going to talk about is childcare dollars. So we operate the Child Care and Development Block Grant, about $140 million a year in funding. which really is for families to take their kids to childcare, subsidized childcare, so that they can go to work. That is the purpose behind the block grant. We, of course, in a different division, operate the licensing and regulations for childcare facilities, but totally different divisions. So with the CARES Act, we received about $50 million in consolidated appropriations, was another 150, and then in ARP was $350 million. So so just a massive influx in dollars. Again, the intent is to use those one to stabilize the industry. Because of course, with economic impact of COVID, there is a significant impact to our providers. I will tell you, we lost probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 120 providers across the state during the pandemic. It's because of antiquated technology. It's hard to tell exactly why we lost them. There's definitely churn and ongoing reduction in facilities over the many years, but there's a variety of reasons, but somewhere in that range, 100 to 120 providers out of 3,000 across the state. So from my perspective, and from the sort of data that we've seen across the country, that seems to be on the lower side. So again, we're able to not necessarily play as much defense as some other states, but again, I don't want to appreciate the impact of the economic disaster to our child care providers. So there are, with these dollars, we intend to, and actually within the next couple of business days, I just sent a text message seeing if I could give an exact day, but probably early next week, we will release public guidance as to an 8-quarter strategy for deployment of $250 million in quality and sustainability payments. We've already done a couple of rounds of those through the pandemic, but this is dramatically higher. So we're excited about the opportunity to do that. Again, it's an 8-quarter strategy. We want to make sure that we are in a position to provide our partners in the community a long runway of what we're thinking and what we're going to deploy, so that they can build their plans around that. So that's an exciting opportunity ahead. We're also looking at some specialty grant opportunities, again, from a transformational perspective, around special needs childcare, which is of great need in our communities. And I saw Wanda Felty on the call also. So we're looking forward to working with her organization on how we can serve the needs of those with disabilities through specialty grants for childcare. Further, also looking to address childcare deserts with these funds as well, because the block grant was intended to help families go to work in low-income communities. If we can work to address childcare deserts, I think we've got a tremendous opportunity to lift families out of poverty, or to remove the shackles that keep families in poverty. So those are the primary ones to discuss. I will also, in my role as cabinet secretary, provide some guidance as what I have towards the $1.8 billion that the state received. There were hundreds of millions of dollars sent directly to cities and counties, but the state itself received $1.8 billion in funds from ARP. The cabinet has been working to elevate projects and ideas. Nothing is a bad idea. So there's lots of good ideas. I guess I said nothing's a bad idea, but there are lots of ideas. And so we're elevating those ideas that come from our agencies, that come from the needs that we all identify, and especially as the organizations that would likely be the ones who actually execute on the projects that are approved. I think our voices carry particular weight. So the good thing is we've got lots of input from across the state this time around. And so we have our legislative partners who are definitely involved and helping bring together ideas from sort of all parts of the state. We're excited about the opportunity to deploy dollars, or I personally am, and I'm assuming everybody else is, in an equitable fashion, including our rural communities as well. So that's why it's critical to have legislative input and insight as well. So the governor's office and the legislature are working together to bring a full list of projects to deploy those dollars. So again, I think there's a pretty long runway of those. So I'm not sure whether we'll see the full 1.8 billion deployed now or not, but as I get more information, I'm happy to share. So I guess that's my report this morning.
Thank you, Secretary Brown. Do we have any questions?
Question. Secretary Brown, I was curious, have you all seen a need for 24-hour daycare and also daycare with a focus on like trauma-informed care for kids with IA scores?
John, I can talk for hours on this. The answer, of course, is yes to both. So one of the opportunities specifically and potentially these specialty grant spaces in childcare is to promote the non-traditional hours in childcare, both nights and weekends. Childcare that, of course, especially in our low-income communities where families are looking for jobs that are not that traditional 8 to 5. We need to build those supports within our community. So 100% yes. We've also stood up a platform called KITH.care, KITH.care, which is helps to promote multi-generational in-home care. And so that is a non-traditional and childcare desert solution. So if I can talk about that another time. That's a long conversation, but KITH.care. And again, that helps for us to address those needs from a trauma-informed perspective. You may or may not be aware, we launched the Oklahoma Clearinghouse for Early Childhood Success in December. Those committees are working really hard right now, standing up workflows. There's a research committee, an implementation committee, and they look at global research through 4 different topic areas. The first one is social emotional well-being. And so the intent there is for the research committee, which is 9 researchers across the state, to evaluate global research. And then around, again, those 4 topics, it's social emotional well-being, healthy homes and relationships, child developmental stages, and equitable distribution of resources. Those are the 4 topic areas of the clearinghouse. The website there is okclearinghouse.org if you want to learn a little bit more. But they look at research through those lenses. If the research committee says, yes, this particular piece of research would drive outcomes for social emotional well-being, for example, it then goes to an implementation committee, which is 15 actual providers in early childhood settings that say, yes, that research looks great, but there's no way we can actually implement it in an early childhood setting. It's just not practical. Or yes, it's practical. And we definitely want to, sort of spread this trauma-informed conversation across the state. So that allows for us to invest in projects that the clearinghouse approves, and it's with our there's a quality component to the Child Care Development Block Grant. About 9.2% of that block grant is intended to go to quality initiatives. So it allows for us to invest in on-site resources, training for the actual providers themselves to implement projects just like this. So I'm pretty confident that the Science of Hope, Dr. Hellman's project research is going through at some point. There's I think some others sort of around that topic area coming through. So we're excited and 100% believe that trauma-informed and trauma-informed care is really critical in early childhood settings. So again, we can talk much longer on these conversation topics, but I'll keep it in the memory.
Awesome. I do have a couple of quick questions, Secretary Brown. As far as the KITH.care goes and the co-payments for low-income families, are we looking at extending that?
Yep. Yes. So KITH.care and co-pays for families are definitely on the list. We've already announced through the end of summer. We'll likely, I'm pretty confident that it'll be for an extended period beyond that. I know that's on the list and I know it made it, but it's a public setting, so I don't want to overcommit, but that's definitely the intent. How's that? And those are incredible supports to our families, but also incredible supports to providers, because it's not that we prevent providers from collecting them, it's that we pay them. So the provider actually gets the money, the child care provider, and then families don't have to actually pay it, those that are eligible for subsidy. So it's really great intervention. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions from commissioners? Awesome. Secretary Brown, thank you so much for the presentation. Moving back over to agenda item number 8. We have Ms. Beth Martin with the Oklahoma State Department of Health, and she's here to present the state plan for the prevention of child abuse and neglect. Like the budget, the commissioner's approval is required by statute. anytime there is an amendment to this plan. So Director Jacoby, is there anything you'd like to add before Ms. Martin's presentation?
Just how much we appreciate the State Department of Health and all their prevention efforts. And we know that Beth Martin is a huge supporter of prevention and an innovator, and we're very happy to have her. So thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Director Jacoby, for those kind words. Chairperson Laird and commissioners, thank you for having me again this morning. For those of you that are new to the commission, you might think I'm a regular feature, but really I'm not. A couple of times a year and then I'm out of here. So, but I did want to take this opportunity, and we are not asking for any changes or amendments to the state plan this morning. I just request each year at this time through Director Jacoby to give you an update of what we're doing. I want and I want the new commissioners to know, you know, what's going on with the state plan for child abuse and neglect prevention. I'm going to share my screen, I hope. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Ms. Martin, if you will put it into slideshow so it will maximize to the Zoom window, that'd be great.
Yes, that is my next step. You know, each platform does this a little bit differently, and there you go.
Now you'll need to change display setting.
Yes.
Because we see presenter view. So look to the upper left of your screen over just a little bit, click where it says display settings. There you go. And swap.
Wow.
Perfect.
That work?
Yes,
Okay.
excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I love technology help. Okay, so I am very pleased to be here. The state plan for the prevention of child abuse and neglect is a 5-year plan. And because it's a 5-year plan is the reason that I like to come before the commission each year and give updates on what we've accomplished and where we're going with the plan. So a little bit about the history. This is a legislatively mandated plan through the Child Abuse Prevention Act. The State Department of Health and the Office of Child Abuse Prevention is required to provide this plan and coordinate with partners to develop the plan. It's a little open as to how long the plan is, and we've done a variety of lengths on the plan. Considering that we've just come through a pandemic, I'm really glad that we went with the 5-year plan because I think it's given us a little bit of stability in the area. But we are legislatively mandated to create the plan and present it to you present it to you when the new plan is ready. And then as Director Jacoby mentioned, if we have any changes to the plan, then this would be the time that we would bring those changes to you. I believe that you have a copy of my PowerPoint in your, no, you don't have the PowerPoint. Maybe that's coming out later, but you have a copy of the plan and a couple of other attachments that I would like to talk about this morning. And so, again, we present this to you all at least every 5 years. The state plan that we developed has these 4 large goals that encompass the work that we're doing with our partners: infrastructure, resources, community involvement, and knowledge. And it's really kind of exciting right now because I feel like we are in an opportunity stage to touch each of these significantly. We had plans, but now with some additional funding that we talked about last time, we're able to move this a little further with our partners. Collaborations have been huge. we have, since the plan was developed, we meet twice a year with our stakeholders, including our partners from a variety of state agencies, private, nonprofits, community members. And we had our most recent meeting in April, the first part of April, and we go through and update the different pieces of what's going on in the area of child abuse and neglect in the state and where we need to go. This past year, the most exciting thing has been we've combined these biannual meetings with the Department of Human Services and their Family First planning process. And so we work very closely with DHS, Keitha Wilson, Dr. Shropshire in those efforts so that we can align the primary prevention, secondary prevention, and into tertiary prevention efforts in a continuum. And that has been really a game changer for us to have that full participation. And then all the other partners who have also collaborated with us. I do have to say, prior to the pandemic, we had these meetings face to face, but during the pandemic, the 2 meetings we've had have been very well attended. And so that's, the exciting thing, that we can have so much participation because of the virtual format. One of the things that we have done and has been set into place through the Department of Health, and our end of it is we survey the population, stakeholders, communities, and professionals. So we have 2 different surveys, and the newest surveys that we're getting ready to launch next week were provided to you in your packet. You will see more information. The health department is working on press releases, and those will go out next week after full agency approval's been received. But these surveys provide us some ongoing data. We now have 3 years worth of surveys, and this year and last year, we updated the survey to include some particular questions regarding the pandemic and what, being at home all the time, what have been some struggles and what have been some successes for families, and what professionals and stakeholders in the community have seen. So we have some really good data, and we have reports that I'm happy to share. They're fairly lengthy from our program evaluators at the state health department. And so I have those reports, and this year we were able to do kind of a 3-year comparison from the data we've collected so far. The purpose of having this and the data collection is to inform the next plan, excuse me. So the whole purpose as we go through this kind of active process is to keep adding to our wealth of information so that when we sit down and work on the next plan, whether it be 3 years or 5 years, we have data that we can refer to that we've done through this process. And so again, we were able to survey this past year some responses regarding the pandemic, and those are included again. A few tweaks have been made, but to get to some information that we think will be helpful in the future as we start to look at what we need to do next. Speaking of which, moving forward, as I said, the upcoming survey is going to be released next week. There are 2 components to that. You have 2 surveys in your packet. One is for stakeholders and professionals. The other is more directed towards families or caregivers in the community. And so they're rather lengthy surveys. They will be available online through SurveyMonkey. The link will be provided as we push those out. The next piece is our next biannual meeting, which will include, again, our partners at DHS. Will be October 14th, just for the calendar, 2021. Those are usually in the morning. And so we will be working towards that. Areas that we continue to look at and try to focus on, getting more community and family involvement in our surveying. We, as with all things, it's a process to push these things out to the actual stakeholders that are utilizing the services and get the best information we can. So we're always trying to involve the community and to push those out, even more grassroots. We want to look at, as we move forward, gaps in the prevention continuum, and having some of the ARPA dollars that we've been awarded is gonna help with that. And so that's another exciting development. And then again, working on the next plan cycle, which will be coming up sooner than we know. This has just been kind of a brief overview. I want you to know that we are continuing to work on this, and I'm really excited about a lot of our collaborations and efforts, particularly with DHS, the Department of Mental Health, and the nonprofit world has been so supportive and involved in this. I will close now and field any questions if anybody has any questions.
Director Front?
Thank you for that presentation, Beth. It was really good, and I enjoyed it last month as well. But I wanted to ask if you, we have the Oklahoma School for the Deaf, and we also have Oklahoma School for the Blind, but at our deaf school, we are expanding our birth to 3-year program and working with daycares across the state for those parent supports for the children who are are deaf or hard of hearing. And some of what ends up into potential abuse and neglect because of those issues. And then there's the ACE, and that sort of thing. Are you looking for, could I connect you with my superintendent at the school and see if there's anything we could connect on in that program growth?
Absolutely. We do our best to include partners in the field of disabilities. We have parents that have been involved. Wanda has been involved in this process. And so we would love to include any other people. So yes, please send me that information and I'll make sure they get hooked up with the next meeting that we're going to have. And
that'd be great.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to have that additional resource.
I'll probably also send you our superintendent of the School for the Blind, because they do work with birth to 3 as well. And any supports we can give the parents, before they go into whether it's our school or other public school environments, it's always beneficial to the parents or guardians or whoever, is connected with the child. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Martin? Ms. Martin, I want to thank you for your leadership and for your collaboration. When you talk about a continuum of prevention, it's so delightful to hear and so important for our children and families. So thank you for that. And Director Front, your question was a perfect example of why this commission exists, for the cross collaboration and idea sharing and connection. So thank you for that. All right. We are going to move on to our next presentation, and I am going to move the agenda item, not only to keep you on your toes, but it is an action item that requires a vote. So we'll come back to our legislative update, but I'd like to invite Ms. Lisa Rhodes for the presentation from the Child Death Review Board recommendations. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes.
Welcome. Apologies to do the switcheroonie with equipment here real quick. If Ms. Beth could not share her screen anymore.
I'm working on that now.
Thank you.
Apologies for, I have no idea what my camera's gonna look like for me. Oh, good, no camera for me. That's my favorite. Again, appreciate the opportunity to come in front of everyone today, as well as our virtual participants that are joining us. It is interesting days these days, of course, as far as keeping families together, strong and safe during a pandemic, much less everything else that we have to be struggling against. So won't take up too much of your time, but I do want to give you all a little bit of background. Basically, we have a mission statement, and we are to reduce preventable deaths through multidisciplinary case review. Quick facts, give you a little bit of background. The board was created as a result of a child abuse study that the legislature did in 1989. And that was about 6 months of studying, and then came up with a report that tackled 27 different issues facing the state and made recommendations for what the state could do to reduce the number of preventable deaths. One of which was create Child Death Review Board. We are also sunset reviewed, and we most recent happened during the pandemic last year, and we were renewed for 3 years. The statute also has a specific definition of what the child protection system is that the board is responsible for overseeing. Statute requires annual data report as well as recommendations, and that data, those recommendations are for consideration for OCCY's State Plan for Children's Services. So, I want to just let you all know totals for real quickly. 136 reviewed in calendar year 2019. We report on a review year, looking forwards to the future where I can report on year of death, though, so we can do some true annual year-to-year comparative studies. Top mechanism is always accident, and this particular year we're at 59 and 31 unknowns, 19 suicides, 18 homicides, and 9 natural. Somewhat lower of a number for deaths reviewed because we have had a backlog of near deaths, and we did a focus on near deaths in 2019 and 2020. So there's going to be a higher number of those that you see reported out. Vehicular remains top mechanism within accidental manners of death. Pay particular attention to this number at 31. We will revisit it here shortly. Unknown / could not be determined. I'm using both of those because the medical examiner's office uses unknown. The death certificate says could not determined. They are interchangeable as far as what that manner is, as far as what board Child Death Review Board said. Majority of these in this category are under 1 year of age. 2/3 were determined to be related to an unsafe sleep environment, and an additional 3 could not tell if that was the only factor contributing to the death. Suicides at 19, firearm, top mechanism. Little bit of particulars about them, especially want to point out some of the areas where we don't have the information. That is important to know. For instance, it helps understand the child situation if we know if they've been a cutter, they have a history of cutting. There's a history of attempts in the family, history of attempts for themselves, and oftentimes this information is not being collected by scene investigators. On the sides, firearm, top mechanism, and that. We do have a physical abuse that I want to give a little bit of, hopefully not too identifying specs about, but the child has not been found, but the courts have determined a homicide has occurred and have been convicted and serving time, as well as investigated by Department of Human Services and substantiated as to physical abuse. So that is why it is categorized in as a homicide and physical abuse for this. Lower number of naturals. Not always aware of the medical condition until after the child has died. So we don't do all naturals, just those that have been, for whatever reason, passed away unexpectedly and accepted by DHS for investigation, who then refers it to child death review. Sleep related, this total number is 35, reflecting back to our total traffic at 31. Consistently, it's usually a bigger gap, but for this particular data year, sleep related has outnumbered motor vehicles for almost 10 years now. And motor vehicles is all ages, sleep related not. So sorry to have the happier news be at the end of the meeting today. Some things that we track to help identify prevention is the position when the child is placed to sleep. In investigative reports, this is not known in over a third of the reports we review. Also looked at is position when found. We're a little better on documenting when we're found. This particular unknown, and same with the one on the previous slide, they are unknown because they're not documented. We do have a situation where you have a separate unknown as far as sleeping location goes, where the caregiver reported one sleeping style, but the law enforcement officer did not believe that to be true and put that in his report, and I was pleased about that. And so we were able to agree and say probably not really where they slept. Want to especially point out here, of all the locations, barely over 10% occurred in a spot that is meant for infant sleep. As well as we have over 50% sharing that sleep space with at least one other being. Almost 50% had a crib available in the home, but we don't know that for another 40%. Same with exposure to tobacco. There's lots of things in these investigations that we as prevention persons would like to know so that we can direct the needs to where, direct the resources to where the needs are. Child maltreatment totals, 31 for calendar year 2019, with accident being the top mechanism. Try and not do so many words next time and have pictures. But 5 of those were abuse only, 2 abuse and neglect, and 3/4 of them neglect only, which is common. Neglect kills more children than abuse does, although you wouldn't know that by some of the headlines. Majority, not quite a majority, a third of them included lack of supervision, failure to protect from hazards. Also want to share a little bit with you all. The board this year is starting to shift its philosophy and what they are ruling neglect to be as far as these safe sleep environments. We are pretty strict that if we had documentation, they were educated previously or there was significant documentation at the scene that there was substance abuse by the caregiver, then we were sure to do it. The rest of the time, it was kind of a gray area. We're kind of shoring up that gray area now because after so many years of it, in fact, just last week we did the first 8 cases we did were sleep-related cases. So they are a pretty big chunk of the cases that we
And quick question, is that just for under the age of 1 on the sleep, or what's the?
I didn't run the ages for this year. Normally, yes, majority of the time, yes. I feel like for 3 years and the system we use to collect the data asks that question through age 4. We do have some 1-year-olds that we believe, especially if they have RSV going on and found entangled in the bed sharing, that we're going to consider that to be safe sleep related as well. So there are some at times in child death review data that are going to be older than 1, but rarely older than 2, won't be older than 2. Little bit of information on those that were child maltreatment, including 5 of those 7 abuse cases did include abusive head trauma. Almost half of them had a previous referral on them, and 5 had an open case at the time. Do a little bit of information on the caregiver. I won't go through all of these, but also want you to know that it's going to be uploaded to the website today. And so please, if you get a moment, go ahead and check out some of the information and share. Near deaths we did in 2019 were 106, with a third of them and the top injury being physical abuse, poisoning. Fortunately, we see higher numbers just in the near-death population, kind of going even with our opioid crisis we have going on, and not so much in our death. And it's our younger children getting into other folks' medications. Of the near death, 75 alleged to be neglect, 23 both, 8 abuse only. Over half of them were substantiated by DHS as to the allegations, and not quite half of those resulted in a treatment plan. In some, immediate termination of parental rights, and so no treatment plan was initiated. 40% previous referral. 30 of the 32 were attributed to abusive head trauma. And in 2 of those, there was also a simultaneous separate inflicted injury occurring at the same time. A little over 10% sustained a chronic condition as a result of the near-death incident as well. So a lot of data for you really quick, and I apologize, but wanted to kind of give you a picture because the board has always kind of tried to address everything. And in the past, those who've been able to see this before, we've had a long list for almost specific agencies on who should do what. And so including so we did that this year, and included increasing scene investigation thoroughness as well as reimbursement for what is it? For child maltreatment assessments, and maybe kind of learning more and supporting efforts around the state as far as infant mental health goes. Submitted them to the director, and had conversations. We thought, well, let's see if we can narrow it down for the commission. And so we did, and the narrowed down should be in your packets. And the 3 items we want to address, or asking the commission to address and include in the state plan, is supporting the state's efforts for combating abusive head trauma. And full disclosure, I have been participating in this project since its inception, and became its group co-lead a couple of years in. The background work started around 2005, 2007, but the project launched in 2010. And currently, through a bunch of partners at the health department and headed by Maternal Child Health, we assist hospitals in obtaining Peer to Purple Crying, which is abusive head trauma prevention program. And we cannot get all of the hospitals on board, and also want to note, I'm sorry for the doom and gloom, but at the beginning of this in 2008, we had 59 birthing hospitals. So we have lost that many birthing options across the state during that time period. So another little plug for our rural areas needing some support and infrastructure. So recommending the program continue to be funded, and ensuring birthing hospitals provide this education in the expectations that caregivers may acquire skills that empower their capability to keep an infant safe. It comes in an app in the hospital. It's recommended they work one-on-one. We do have some dose 2. The hospital portion is known as dose 1. We have some dose 2 currently going on across the state. And so we're just asking for continued support of that.
Ms. Rose, is the primary reason birthing hospitals don't utilize it, is it cost prohibitive or are there other
No,
reasons?
Birthing hospitals closed.
Okay, that's the
They just
difference.
don't exist.
Oh, okay.
And if the whole hospital didn't close, the delivery services
Okay,
stopped.
so doesn't it say 39 of the 46 across the state provide this education?
Yes.
Okay,
And so I'm sorry, I was referring to, it used to be 39 of 60.
I see.
And
But for the seven that don't,
it is not, it's free to them. And
Okay.
so it's not cost effective. And that's another thing we're trying to find out now. The project did have an intern this past year who surveyed participants who are providing. And my apologies for not having that feedback right here. So we did get some feedback and we're trying to figure out ways that we can work through some of the feedback that we got, in addition to expanding some of the devs to and our partners. But no cost to them. We think it's a time thing because of sitting one-on-one. And, we want them in, we want out, and all that kind of aspect. So balancing what's important before they leave the hospital. It's been part of that.
Could we get a list of which ones
Yes.
choose not to participate?
Yes. Definitely. Just for time's sake here. That's all.
I'm just.
The next topic is unsafe sleep. In 2019, these were 30% of the cases that were reviewed and closed. Again, reiterating, 75% of them were due to be related to unsafe sleep environment. Another work group out of Preparing for a Lifetime that I've, at the beginning of the campaign, was able to be active in, then had to pull back when my program lost resources. And so now I'm starting to be able to be back active with them. And we're trying to do coordinated activities as well. But no one in the state is aware of who's providing what safe sleep education for families and what they're providing. So the board's thought is that would be a good spot to start. We want to ensure the message is correct and in alignment with the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I actually had the honor of being asked to participate in a collaboration out of Johns Hopkins. So we kind of laid the foundation and kind of have an idea of how this could go and some of the different partners out there who might be providing this, including tribal partners, to find out. And then figure out a way that we can plug education into those areas that don't have any resources whatsoever. We have a lot out there for childcare, but we don't have a lot just for families. And lastly, kind of referenced it in the other suicide information. They are pretty minimal. You get the least amount of information in a suicide case, including rarely is a caregiver even interviewed. We had one recently where shooting happened. We don't even know who brought the gun. We don't know if the victim who did it brought it or found it at the house party or what. So those need to be shored up so that we can find out what prevention avenues we need to utilize, as well as we'd like to see an increase in scene investigators notifying child welfare about suicide cases. So any questions? I was really rushed, I'm sorry.
Do you have any questions from the commissioners?
This is Judge Warren. I do have one question. You had some deaths attributable to an unsafe sleeping environment. Could you describe an example of what you were meaning by that?
Yes, sir. Not in a crib, not in a bassinet, alone with nothing else in there. ABC, alone on the back in a crib. So for instance, they might have been on the couch with a sibling, usually a caregiver though.
Okay.
Or they're in the crib and they have 2 adult pillows, an adult comforter, and an adult fleece blanket. heavy bulky bedding that's not meant for infants is often in their environment.
Okay. Thank you.
And so my comment would be, I think one way to get a lot of this information out is to utilize the child protection teams through the local DA's offices. We're staffing cases and OCCY already has the partnership with our child protection teams. And I think maybe if there was a little bit more effort to push that out directly to the child protection teams, that's something, as someone who participates in my teams, that's something that I would help share, in those meetings about, suicides, abusive head trauma, unsafe sleep conditions. We have a lot of issues with making sure that we are getting all that information, even in the course of the investigation. And so if that's something we know needs to be looked at.
You betcha.
So I would encourage that.
Excellent. And one recommendation we've had for years that didn't make it into the narrowed down one is we are constantly requesting, recommending both on an individual case basis and globally that law enforcement adopt sudden unexpected infant death scene investigation protocols that are out there and published and free through the CDC. And they collect all the protocols to guide the investigator through all that information that we need. And also kind of includes, it does include scene recreation of how the caregiver came upon finding the child and the position the child was in an adult reenactment scenario. And I've been hopeful to utilize some of the child protection teams out of DA's offices to adopt those scene investigations.
I think that typical, my observation is that what happens, it's a suicide, it appears to be just a natural death of a child in the home. And I think at that point, everybody's like, well, we're not, it's not homicide. We don't need it. We don't need to figure anything out at this point. And so.
However, backtracking back to neglect.
Neglect is a huge issue,
And was that child supposed to be getting medication?
Absolutely.
Was that child supposed to be seeing a provider? Were they all sorts of questions that we don't know and need to be answered because there might be a crime there? Yes, sir.
Ms. Rhodes, did you also have information, data information on where the caregiver committed suicide and killed the child?
Yes. Familial incidents, is that what you're talking about? Where the caregiver will, it's called family annihilations?
Yes.
Yes, we review those as well.
Okay.
So 2 quick questions. One, I'm thinking back to when we had our children and we had training in the hospital on shaken baby syndrome. Is that essentially what the period of purple training is? Okay.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yes.
And then secondly, have you looked at, or are there currently partnerships with nonprofit agencies around the state to help with education or advocacy? I'm thinking of, in Tulsa, we have emergency infant services where I volunteer. And so we interact with parents who are in difficult circumstances often. And, are there resources that they could be sharing to help promote this? And I know that they do to some extent, but I'm wondering if that partnership can be.
Yes, definitely. And Parent-Child Center in Tulsa is one of our partners.
They're great.
Yes, and one of our fantastic Dose 2 programs is out of there. And Ms. Mildred is going to barbershops to get fathers' attentions. And it's really been successful. It's been exciting to be able to hear about it.
Thank you.
Oh, and one other caveat. We are trying to move away from the term shaken baby syndrome because defense attorneys like the word syndrome. So we use abusive head trauma because you don't have as much gray area when you have diagnosed trauma to a brain versus, well, this looks like it could be part of this cluster of injuries that occur.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.
I do have one question for you. Ms. Rhodes, thank you for the presentation, the research and the recommendations. My question is, you alluded to the backlog, and it's been discussed kind of in terms of the additional staffing as well as the database and how that will support it. Could you remind us what is the current backlog? And then do you know that information offhand?
I do know the information offhand. I can't give you firm numbers, but I can tell you that we are not done reviewing deaths from 2018. I have not set up any cases for 2020.
Okay. We'll be real excited to hear the timeline and the plan to get that shored up.
I'm excited to get it to you.
We understand that there is a lot of moving parts that comes along with that, but it's helpful for us to know what we're looking at when we come to backlog.
Shoring up. And the staff I was able to introduce, I just wanted to also say we've had Liz for 1 year and we've had Joseph for 6 months. So we're looking forward to really getting the path figured out and reporting back.
Thank you for the work you do. We do need a motion. Thank you, Reminder Director Jacoby, to accept the report and recommendations.
So, second.
Thank you, Judge Warren. Any final discussion? We'll take the vote. Commissioner Aaron? Yes. Director Front? Yes. Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
Director Holt?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurth? Yes. Commissioner Laird? Yes. District Attorney Marcy? Yes. Commissioner Myers?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Judge Warren?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you all. Ms. Harden, we have you up next for a legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Annette just wanted me to briefly touch on a few interim studies that you guys might be interested in. I have 4. So we have Representative Josh West wants to examine practical ways the state can incentivize, train, and retain behavioral health professionals where they're needed the most. We have Representative Cynthia Rowe would like to examine the lack of physician oversight when dealing with medical marijuana patients under the age of 18. Then we have Representative Lawson, who would like to examine the financial cliff of human services subsidies, TANF, SNAP, child care, housing vouchers, et cetera, and the effects on Oklahoma families and what role does this cliff play in generational poverty. And then Representative Carol Bush would like to examine some adjustments of the Hidden Predator Act and the long-term effects of child sex abuse on victims. And I think basically she's trying to extend the statute of limitations, make that longer for charges to be filed. But it also noted that this would apply to civil courts, not criminal. So those are the 4 that caught my eye. Today's the last day to file or put in any request for proposals. And the Senate will approve requests by July the 2nd, and the House has until July 23rd to approve their interim studies. So let's see what gets approved, and I'll keep you guys updated.
Thank you, Ms. Harden. Director Jacoby?
In addition to the written report, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding that, I wanted to tell you that Ms. Nicole Johnson, who's been here before, and I'm not going to get the name right, but I need glasses. She works at Heartline, but she's with the Youth Crisis Mobile Response Team. She's brought some swag for you today. It's at your chair. We have a whole bunch more of those, so take more. We just wanted to give you a sample, but they do amazing work and can send out, they have people all over the state, and they can send a strike team to a child in crisis if need be. The first thing is a phone call, a quick assessment, and if this child or youth says, I'm either not in danger, but I'm in danger of hurting myself, and they will ask, do you need me to come to you? And they will get somebody there. So there are people on standby all over the state. It is a dynamite service provided by Heartline. They do education, a really nice suicide prevention education. So please utilize that and take as much stuff as you want. So there's that. And then secondly, I know some of you have been contacted. We've been trying to zero in on where we're going to do some summer stops with the Institute for Child Advocacy. And Ms. Geiger has reached out to some of you to see if you want to help us with maybe being a local host or tell us what cool events are in your community or what's missing in your community for children and youth. And so if you have been tapped by Ms. Geiger, could you respond to her if you're interested? We have heard from some of you. Mr. Hall, I don't know that you were on that list, but we are coming to Tulsa. And so Tulsa and Oklahoma City are on that list. And so we were worried about getting something up and running for rural because we want to give people a heads up. But no, you're going to get tapped. So you have not been ignored. So please help Ms. Geiger as we plan those. And we're excited. Those will probably start in August because the Institute for Child Advocacy is really busy through July, as you heard Joe talk about, prepping for their Heroes Ball. Now there's just kind of this mad dash to do August and September and put those comments and what we learned from communities into that plan that Ms. Geiger is going to be writing for us. And then lastly, we did not include, but we should have, and I want to give a shout out to the kids count data that you probably have seen on your social media and hearing on national radio and in some of the local news. I'll make sure you get that information. And I just, as a proud mama moment, want to say Gabrielle Mary Jacoby was wrote that. So it's kind of fun to see your child on your heels, smarter and better and more effective than you. So it's very, very fun to see this next generation coming up and caring about kids. But we'll make sure you get that information. I will say, I know they're willing and ready to come do presentations. So if you want someone to come to a civic group as PTA or, whatever group you've got, they are happy to talk to you about where Oklahoma ranks in child well-being. And if you didn't hear, we're in the bottom 10. We're ranked 42nd. And they have it broken out. This is an Annie Casey program. This is a national program. They've been doing these same indicators for many years. So while we made gains in, I believe, every category, our gains are modest compared to other states, and they're still leaping ahead of us. So things for us to think about, chew on, and know that our work is not done. So Oklahoma Policy Institute, thank you for supporting Kids Count and taking on that work. And we are happy to share that information and get it to you. Please contact them if you want to utilize them as a resource, because that Kids Count data is really good stuff. And that's it.
Any questions for the director from her report? Excellent. Do we have any commissioner announcements? Okay. My final remarks, I do want to thank Assistant Director Mark James for his work putting together the budget and the Finance Committee for their review and input in the process, as well as OMES for their support. I do want to remind commissioners that we are back to being required to having at least eight commissioners present in order to meet quorum. So if at all possible, I do want to encourage commissioners to be in person. Not only helps to ensure quorum, but also creates a time and space for us to better get to know one another. And lastly, I want to congratulate Secretary Brown and all of the staff at Oklahoma Human Services for receiving the Most Innovative Agency Award at the All Agency Summit this week. That was from Governor Stitt. So congratulations to Secretary Brown. I don't believe he's on anymore, but and the entire staff at Oklahoma Human Services. That brings us to the end of our meeting. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Marcy, in a second. We are dismissed.